Hi, I'm Dawson Duke,
I'm Kayla Bullock.
and this is Horror Hideout. We're going to be covering everything horror, including books, video games, movies, and comics. Welcome to the second episode of Horror Hideout.
Where we are discussing 2017's Mayhem.
So this is one of my favorite movies.
One of my husband's favorite movies, too.
Uh, it's kind of on the cusp of horror. It's a lot more actiony than horror.
I saw a quote that said it was a version of Die Hard for horror fans, and I think that pretty much sums it up.
So we're going to start with our spoiler-free review before we jump into the plot of the movie. Do you want to start us?
So our movie centers around Derek Cho, who is an employee at a law firm.
I wrote it down, a legal analyst.
For Towers and Smythe Consulting, and it's his dream job. It's what he's always wanted to do, but he's just not happy there.
He's grown jaded over the years.
Right. And so there's a virus in the world that is. They mention Boise at one point. They mentioned that there was an incident in Boise, and it is the ID7 red eye virus. And this virus is not lethal, but it infects neural pathways, removing all inhibition and moral integrity, resulting in people acting out their darkest impulses, which may include murder.
So, if you have read the Crossed comic series by Garth Ennis, the same guy who did The Boys, if you're familiar with that, or the movie Sadness, it's a Taiwanese movie that came out in 2021. If you're familiar with either of those, this is like a light version of that. It's not as dark as those. It's more of a fun.
So, Derek Cho is played by Steven Yeun, and the whole movie centers around his office. I don't think there's any scenes off of the office except for the very end. Yeah, except for the very, very end. But this ID7 virus, basically it gets into the office and all hell breaks loose. I don't really know what else to say that's not spoilers because...
Yeah, there's not much to say. We're going to have to get into spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it and come back to this.
Alright, so we start out with Derek in his office and he's... well, one thing Dawson and I talked about was he narrates part of the movie, but it's not like... How do you explain? It's not like he's narrating the entire movie. He more just lets you know who the big players are in the movie. Dawson kind of compared it to a video game, which I think makes a lot of sense. As far as just getting you to know who the bosses are and who the key players are.
And yeah, the whole movie kind of feels very video game-esque, but they even have nicknames like there's the Siren and the Grim Reaper and the Bull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But one thing we learn pretty early on in the movie is he tells us about the case of Neville
Yes,
Reed.
that is how the movie starts. We don't start with him in the office. We start with the case of Neville Reed.
Well, Neville was... So the people that are infected with the virus, they call them Redders, and he was the first Redder to be cleared for murder. He murdered a coworker.
Yes.
And because it was the virus that made him do it, they found that he was not to blame for what he did, and he was he got off of the murder charges.
They said the case was dismissed.
Right.
And they said that Derek Cho found the loophole that got him off.
Right. And so that kind of comes into play later on, but Towers and Smythe Consulting was the legal firm that represented Neville in his case.
Yes.
So that just kind of gives you a little background on the virus and what it does to people, because when Neville is killing the guy, there's also other things in the background going on with other murders and sexual things and just all kinds of different stuff. People don't have inhibitions anymore, so they are just doing whatever they want.
Which, there is some sexual content in this movie, but it's not super explicit. I mean, you see it in the background a few times, and there's one...
There's really no nudity. I mean...
you see boobs, and I guess, in the very beginning scene, when it's talking about Neville.
And you see the guys... No, I don't think you do. I think that's the only time, maybe.
Yeah, and then there's, like, side nudity where you kind of, like, see people doing it in the background.
Yeah. Um. So anyway, we hear Neville's story, and then it's just another day in the office. There's nothing really going on. Derek has a meeting. Well, first of all, Derek is very upset because he can't find his coffee mug. It's his favorite coffee mug, and that actually does come back into play later
Yeah.
on. Um, Now, does he have the call with his? He has the call with his sister
Yes.
next.
Wait, you skipped the part where he saves the other lawyer's assistant because I wanted to mention that.
Oh yeah,
Because at the beginning of the movie, we see him going from he like describes it to us, and we see him in the elevator on like his first day, and then now, and so like on his first day, he's all like, you know, what's the saying?
bright-eyed, and bushy-tailed, and
Yeah,
happy to be there, and
yeah, and
he has a
then
good outlook on the future.
by the time of this movie, we see him, and he's got earbuds in on the elevator, and is kind of ignoring everyone, and you can tell he's very jaded.
Don't
Um,
they do they say it's been like 3 years that he's been there? I think
I don't know if they say the exact number. I'm sure they do,
he's been there a
but
couple years.
yeah.
But
And he got
it's just a big corporation, and everybody gets burnt out when you work in a big corporation like that with no. I mean, he's not moved up like he wanted to.
yeah, and he did get a promotion after he found the loophole in the Reed case,
Right.
however. Um, and oh,
So we follow him into the office in the morning, and one of his coworkers is kind of being a butthead to his assistant.
yeah, screaming at her, and this is how we see that even though he kind of is a jerk and kind of a cog in the corporate machine, he still has integrity because he convinces the guy to back off. But the way he does it is he blackmails him with a video that he has of a blowjob that he got from his assistant at a party.
Right, and he threatens to show it to his wife.
Yeah,
Um, so it kind of just gives you a little insight into his character. He's kind of a dick,
yeah,
but he also kind of looks out for, the other people. Um, so then he goes into his office and he gets a call from his sister Lucy, and this is where we learn that Derek doesn't really have a life outside of work. He's not coming to Lucy's birthday party. He's missed family get-togethers. He's just work is his whole entire life.
yeah,
Um, so he hangs up on her really quickly to go meet with Melanie Cross.
yes.
And Melanie Cross is a client.
She says she's a lawyer at
Well,
first.
yes, she pretends to be a lawyer.
And then whenever I don't remember the exact legal jargon he uses, a
Deed in lieu.
deed in lieu. And then she doesn't know what that is, and he can tell. So then he figures out she's not actually a lawyer, and the building that she lives in, the building she's a tenant in, is being foreclosed.
Right.
And so she came here pretending to be a lawyer so she could get an audience.
Right. And he basically tells her there's nothing he can do. It's ironclad. She said she wants to talk to the person above him who's on the foreclosure.
And it's Irene Smythe.
And it's I say that, and you can just tell by Derek's face that that's like the worst person that could be
Yeah.
on this one.
So when she asks to talk to Irene, he pretends he's calling her and then calls security and has her escorted out.
Right, right. And they're not very nice. But um we also see at this point Derek takes a drink of water and the red eye virus is in his water.
Yes, and we see it spreading to everyone in the building. We see it on doorknobs and people shaking hands and
Right.
people rubbing
And
their eyes.
the movie's not, it doesn't have a whole lot of creep factor to it. It's not that kind of horror. But their eyes, there's something about,
Yeah.
and it's, I think on every person in the movie, it's one eye.
Yes,
It's just one eye the entire movie that is
Yeah.
bright red.
and I don't think it's not always consistent. Like it's not always the left eye or the
Right.
right eye. It's different on different people, but it's always just one.
Well, and I noticed that because his is always the left and hers is always the right. They're opposite. Derek and Melanie are, but that just creeps me out to look at them like that. I don't know. But anyway,
This is when the assistant that he saved from the verbal abuse tells him he's still looking for his mug. He goes back to looking for his mug,
right,
and the assistant tells him that Cara Powell, who's one of the higher level lawyers, who's known as the Siren, is currently throwing him under the bus for a case she
right.
dropped.
On the Vandercorp case.
Yes.
Um, which is it's a we learn later on that it's a pretty huge case and it was a 7-figure deal that got messed up. And she's trying to blame him, and so so Derek goes upstairs to confront Kara, and she has his mug, which ticks him off even more.
Yeah.
Um,
And he says, "What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours, and that's your case, and that's my mug."
right. Um, and but she tells him it's on some spreadsheet, and he said nobody's updated that for years. And she's like, "Well, your name is on it right here next to it."
Um, so their argument doesn't really go anywhere, and so they end up taking it upstairs to John Towers.
Who is the other partner? Who is one of the partners? So Irene
Yes.
Smythe and then John Towers are the partners in the company. But so Derek and the Siren both go up to meet with John. But when we first meet, when Derek's first introducing the Siren, he tells us they call her that because she whispers in the board's ear, and so John is part of what they consider the Nine, which is the board of directors.
Yes.
Um, which I thought was funny. You find this out later on, but I thought it was funny that the board of directors is in the building every workday. Like they're all there together, like sitting in the boardroom. I mean, they're just sitting around a boardroom table.
Well, I wonder if they each have their own offices up there and they're doing different things, because we see Towers in his office, but then later he goes in the
Well,
conference
that's
room.
true, but it's just weird to have the whole board of directors. It's not usually a common thing,
Yeah.
I don't think. Um,
Well, but they had to get together to vote for Cho.
that's true. That's true. You're right. So anyway, so when they walk into Towers' office, he is drawing a picture, and it's three stick figures. He's an artist. According to him, he's an artist, but it's three stick figures running away from a bomb, and so he asks them what's wrong with the picture, or how to fix it.
Yeah.
And so the Siren, I don't even really understand what she drew. Like somebody else getting blown up?
Someone jumping on the bomb.
Okay. I couldn't tell what she was trying to do. Okay. So basically she's saying somebody else should take the fall for the team.
I do think it's funny, though, because you would think she would draw differently than him in any way, but even the hat she draws is the exact same style, so you can tell it's all drawn by the same person.
I never thought about that. That is funny. So then they're kind of arguing back and forth, and John doesn't really want to listen to Derek. He's like on the Siren side from the minute they walk in, and I don't remember what he says.
Who?
Something about taking out the mole or
he says
dead weight or something.
Yeah, like the weak link, because he says that she's always the one that's involved in these.
Right. And so he draws on the picture and he makes it look like her, and is basically saying she should be the one that is gone. One thing I want to mention, I'm gonna back up just a minute. When he's in the meeting with Melanie, of course, it doesn't go well. And she says, and this quote is pretty profound for a horror movie. My mother used to say that no one raindrop ever thought it caused the flood. I now know what she meant by that.
Well, that's not what she says. She just says the water drop part. When he says it later, he says, "I now know what she meant by that," fine. Or he says, "I get that now."
Fine, whatever. But
maybe she does say it then. I don't know.
This has it. IMDb has it credit the whole thing credited to her, but
that might be right. Maybe I'm just thinking of.
I think that from a corporate standpoint, that's. I mean, I work in a corporate job. At the end of the day, it's a corporate job. But what I do still affects the company. So one raindrop does affect the flood, and I think that, and he actually brings that up later on too. Derek mentions that. Yeah. Anyway, I meant to throw that out when we were talking about her, and I forgot. So.
And then so he gets sent out of Tower's office. The Siren stays, but Cho gets sent out.
Right.
And so he goes back downstairs, and he goes to his friend Ewan's office, which I don't think they ever say his name until after he dies.
Yeah, I didn't catch his name either the whole time until he died.
Yeah, I was trying to listen. I don't think they ever say his name. And there's a plaque outside his office, but it's so zoomed out I don't think you can read it. But I wonder if maybe you can, and I just wasn't able to read it.
I couldn't either, but...
But yeah, anyway, his name is Ewan, and so...
Isn't he like the company psychologist?
I don't know. I don't know if they ever say what his job is.
I thought somebody in there said that he was the company psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever. But anyway, he's good friends with Derek.
Yeah. And so Derek goes in and explains the situation. Everything Ewan tries to tell him to do, Derek's like, well, it already escalated, and basically they find out Derek's screwed, is
Right.
essentially all they find out there. You don't really learn much there other than that they're friends.
And they introduce his character.
And then Kara, the siren, comes back downstairs and tells him he better start packing up his stuff. And this is when we see the Nine for the first time.
Is this where he says, does he also tell her, you better give me my coffee mug back? Doesn't he tell her, doesn't he keep bringing up the coffee mug with her?
Yeah.
Which we find out why it's so important later on.
So this is when we meet the Nine for the first time, which is the board of directors. So this is presumably why they're in the building, is because they had to vote on whether or not to fire him from the company. Because they say the Nine has to approve every promotion and...
Right, you're right. I didn't think about
that. Firing.
Right.
So they vote to fire Derek, throw him under the bus for the case. So they send Lester McGill, who's known as the Grim Reaper, who is the head of human resources, and he handles all of the layoffs.
Firings. I mean, they're firing him.
Yeah.
So he handles the firings too. So anyway, he goes into Derek's office and offers him a severance package that
they say he's going to make him rich.
They say he's going to make him rich, but Derek says that he could be liable to the company.
Bandicorp.
Thank you. If they wanted to file suit against him. And he's like, why would I sign this? And he says, to be rich. Well, Derek kind of blows up and gets really ticked off, and the Reaper says, I'm only the messenger. Screaming at me is like yelling at your watch because you're late. And I think that's another kind of a profound, like, how many times do we get mad at somebody for something that's not their fault?
Yeah. But this scene also invokes the earlier scene with Melanie where she said the one raindrop doesn't think that it... Because this is like the exact opposite.
Right.
It's like him saying the opposite thing.
Right. I never even thought about that.
So, basically, this is when the CDC pulls up.
Well, Derek refuses their offer.
Yeah, you said that.
And then so they bring security in, and security's escorting him out.
Yeah, but I don't think we actually see the security until after we see the CDC pull up. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter.
But the CDC pulls up. And earlier in the movie, when he explained the virus to us, he said the CDC had developed a cure once you're infected. They don't have a vaccine yet, though.
Right.
So they have a cure, and...
but it takes 8 hours.
Yes. And so this building has detected to have the virus in it, because it's a new building regulation. They have to put a sensor in all of them, and it makes towers mad. They put one in without his permission.
Right. It's in the ventilation system, because that was actually something I asked Aaron last night. I'm like, how did the CDC know before anybody in the building knew? You know? And they actually explain it that they had put sensors in the ventilation system. And this is where they mention the incident in Boise, because Towers is mad and questioning them.
And I think the incident in Boise was Reed.
Yeah. But she said, the CDC lady says that's why they're able to do that, because they don't, it's a government regulation.
Yeah. So anyway, they lock down the building and won't let anyone out. And this is when...
She also tells him that they've released I don't know what you call it. It's not a vaccine.
Cure.
The cure already into the ventilation system, and that's why they
Is it an antivirus? Is that what they call it?
I don't remember what they call it. But anyway, they've released it into the ventilation system, and that's when we find out that everybody's going to be on lockdown for 8 hours.
Yeah. So...
And we're not just talking CDC. We're talking snipers on buildings and SWAT teams outside. Nobody's leaving that building.
Yeah. And so this is when we see Derek being let out of the elevator by 2 security guys. And so they get down to the lobby, and that's going on. So he kind of gets separated from the security guys. Mm-hmm. And then he gets punched in the face by this random guy. And, you don't have your inhibitions anymore. So Derek starts fighting back and punches this guy and stabs him in the foot. And then that's when Ewan comes up from behind him and stops him and is like, hey.
Right. He tells him, he said, this isn't who you are.
Yeah. And then he kind of talks him down and gets him to breathe. And he Oh, he talks to him about the fact he didn't sign the severance package and convinces him he should do it. Um, and so Derek agrees. So you're like, oh, okay. And then whenever Ewan turns around, Derek disappears, and he goes into the elevator, right?
Well, that's when he decides he's gonna go after. He's gonna present his case to the nine.
I know, but he goes into the elevator
Right,
and then
right.
asks for a one-time code to go up and talk to them.
Right. Do you think him and the IT guy were friends?
I don't know. I don't. It didn't seem like they really knew each other all that well.
Okay.
I just. I don't think anyone likes the Nine there.
Oh, that's true. Because the HR guy, the Reaper, says he wishes the Siren would die.
Yeah. Um,
Right.
and Towers assumes he's coming up there to kill the board because since he's the one that found the loophole in the murder case, he obviously knows that that's a thing that you can
Right.
get off with murder. So Towers assumes he's doing that, so sends him down to the basement where
We meet the Bull.
who is the head of security, and he has like two henchmen.
Well, I thought they said we don't even really know what his role is. He's not security.
Maybe they do.
Yeah,
But
because he
he's
said nobody really knows what his role is.
he's Towers' right hand man,
Right.
and
And he's a big, tall bull. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a big, tall foreign guy.
so he gets sent down to the basement.
And they beat the heck out of him.
Yeah, right when Derek's pinky is about to get broken, Ewan comes out of the elevator and tackles the bull.
Right, and he has two security guards with him too.
Yeah, and
But
Ewan
I'm
gets
sorry, the bull has two
Yes,
other people
yes.
with him too, so it's 3 on 2.
yeah. So Ewan gets punched or shoved back or something, and goes his head goes into a screw that's hanging out of a plank against the wall.
Did you catch what he said there?
He said, "I smell toast."
Is that what he said? Is Aaron and I
When he's dying?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Aaron
he
and
says, "I smell toast."
Aaron and I couldn't figure out what he said. Okay.
Um, so anyway, a nail goes through his brain, so he dies. And one of the security guys, like one of the, not the bull, but one of the other guards that's with him, throws up. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, but then Derek gets knocked out and he wakes up in a cell.
Right. Doesn't he cry over Ewing?
I'm sure he does.
So I think they let him go over to him, and then he gets knocked out. Like I think
Yeah.
they kind of have a moment where, he lost a good friend, and but then he gets knocked out. So then when he wakes up in the cell, Melanie's in there too,
Yeah, so they have a spitting match.
in each other's faces, which is the weirdest thing ever.
Uh,
I'm so mad at you. I've got this virus that takes away my inhibitions. I'm just gonna spit in your face. I'm so mad. I'm gonna spit.
But it devolves into them getting into an actual fist fight.
Right.
But then Cho proposes a team up.
Right. So, Melanie has a set of papers that if somebody from the board of directors, signs these papers, or certain people within the company sign these papers, she won't lose her house.
Yes.
So they decide to team up.
Yes.
And this is where Derek makes a phone call, right?
Yes. So Derek says his thing is finding loopholes. So he's searching what's in the. It's not really a cell. We called it a cell, but it's not really a cell.
It's basically just the
Yeah.
basement.
I think it's under construction, which makes sense why there was the board with a nail hanging out of it and stuff. But anyway, they're locked in a room with a bunch of old stuff. There's just boxes of old random crap. And so he finds boxes that have old phone parts in it. And Melanie's like, "What, you think they're going to put a working phone down here?" And he said, "I don't need a working phone." And he builds one. He puts one together out of pieces that are down there. And so he calls Vandacorp.
You think that has something to do with him not having the inhibition, not having that doubt that he can't do that? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
I know he's really smart, but
Yeah.
not. I mean, if you were handed a box of telephone parts, I'd probably doubt that you could put a phone together. But if you don't have that doubt in your mind,
Yeah.
maybe you could.
And we don't know a whole lot about him, so
Right.
we don't know what he did in the past.
Right.
So anyway, he gets the phone. He calls Vandacorp. So Vandacorp is talking to both him and then the CEO of Vandacorp then calls the 9.
Right. And so they're on a 3-way call.
And I don't think is the case he's talking about. Is it the case that they dropped that he's talking about?
So Vandercorp, Derek, and John and the board of directors are on a three-way call, and basically Derek's calling them out for screwing up the case for Vandercorp.
Yeah, dropping the ball. He says more than that, but
we'll leave it at that.
Um,
Which one thing we did not mention earlier was that John Towers is a drug addict. He's
on cocaine.
Yeah.
And one thing earlier when they're talking to the CDC, whenever they mention the symptoms that people are going to act erratically and become more violent and stuff, he says, "Oh, like being on cocaine."
Doesn't he snort cocaine while he's talking to the CDC? And she's like,
"Not
he
does it later."
Okay.
Not the first time. I think they talked to the CDC 3 different times, and it's the last time.
Okay.
Because then he goes up with a golf club and smashes the TV.
Right.
So anyway, the Vandercorp basically tells the board that he's not going to do business with them anymore, that they're fired from taking his cases.
Right.
So then
it was a pretty huge loss for Vandercorp, this case.
Yes, it was a couple million or something.
Yeah.
And so Towers sends the 3 men, the bull and his 2 friends, or 2 whatevers, in there to take him out, to kill Derek. So when they get in there, Melanie's sitting there acting like she's ordering a pizza on the phone.
Right, which is funny. She's funny. I like her. She reminds me a lot of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn.
Margot Robbie.
Robbie.
And so then Derek comes behind them and knocks them both out. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So they escape, and he takes keys off of one of them, and he, like, beats one of them.
Yeah.
And, like, a lot. Anyway, so they take keys off of them, and they go, and like I said, it's like a construction site down here. And so there's this place where all the tools are, so they suit up, and they take a bunch of tools.
Which is funny, because he's in his dress pants, and, you know, he had his nice dress shirt on, and then he puts on this tool belt and has all these tools.
Which I think he unbuttons his dress shirt, so it's open, but he still has it on.
And Melanie takes a staple gun, a nail gun. It's a nail gun. Big, hefty nail gun.
Yeah. And a saw, a little mini saw.
Which I did see a thing that said most nail guns anymore have a safety feature where you can't shoot them like she was.
Yeah. They
have to be pushed up against something to shoot, but it's okay. She was pretty cool with that weapon.
It could be older equipment, who knows?
That's true.
And when did they start doing that? Because this movie is almost a decade old now.
That's true. But
it
was a cool weapon for her.
It was. And his weapons are mainly just like screwdrivers and stuff.
Wrenches,
screwdrivers, yeah.
Stuff like.
So anyway, they start going back. They go back upstairs. Well, they make a plan.
Don't they? That's when they decide they have to get the key card from the siren.
That's what I was going to say.
Or no, they have to get the key card from
the Reaper.
And then his will take them to the level to get to the siren.
Yes.
And then hers will take them to the level to get to
the 9. Which this is when it really feels like a video game. Is them, oh, these are our objectives. This is how we got to do it. And then they're moving up through the levels of the building, and it's like moving up through the levels.
Which a fun fact that I found out was that I think there's, I don't know if they ever, is there 9 levels in the building? I'm not sure. I don't know if they ever say how many levels they have to go.
I think there are 9, because I think it goes up to 8, and then there's the penthouse button.
Okay. They actually filmed this entire movie in a 3-story building.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you wouldn't, from watching some of the scenes in it, especially the end, you wouldn't know that it was a 3-story building.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
So anyway, they go to get the Reaper's card, and the building has a big, like, thing in the middle, like a balcony type thing, where you can see all the way down through all the floors.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to mention that now, so we know that that's there, because it comes into play later.
Which is also kind of comes into play earlier, too, because as they're going through the different levels, they'll be on one side, and you can see in the background everybody fighting and doing all their own thing.
So they go up to that level, and they almost shoot a nail through Reaper, but he puts up his cane and catches it.
Mm-hmm.
on the thing. And so he goes in his office and locks it, and then they're trying to like bash the door down, and two security guards come up, and they have tasers, and they tase Melanie, but Derek manages to slip away, and then one of the security guards goes after Derek, right, to try to hunt him down, and then the other one starts beating up Melanie. That is her name, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah. Okay. There's Melanie, and then there's the name Melody, and you said Melody earlier, and now it's
Melanie. Yes. Sorry.
No, it was you corrected yourself when you said it earlier, but it's just I'm getting it confused in my head. It's nothing you did, just too many names. What was I saying? Oh, so the one guy goes after him. How does he take that guy out? Do you remember, or does it show it?
No, I don't remember.
Anyway, he makes his way around.
Does he go after him, or does somebody else kill him? Why do I feel like he starts to and somebody else kills him?
It might be so. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The security guard gets taken out.
Yeah. And then Derek comes up and he saves Melanie from the other security guard. And then... Or does that security guard get taken out a different way? Because there's a part where the Reaper comes out and smashes Melanie's hand with his cane. When does that happen?
Yeah, because he says that women should be treated the same as men are.
So is there only one security guard then? And he follows Derek and then... No, because... Yeah.
I don't remember.
I think that's what... It's not super important, but that's what happens. I think Melanie gets beat up by the Reaper. So then Derek comes to save him. Does he have the nail gun, or what does he have that he threatens him with?
How do I not remember? I just watched it last night. Anyway,
I watched it today.
They end up in the Reaper's office with him.
Yes.
And she shoots the nail gun into his desk.
Yeah. And here
his hand.
Derek says the same line that Melanie did earlier about the water droplet.
He also says the same line that he said to Derek in his office. The one about
the messenger.
Yeah.
Well, and the Reaper tries to argue that he's not the one who fired him because Derek says that. Derek said, "You're the one who fired me," and he tries to argue he's not the one that fired him. The firm fired him, and then Derek goes on this big whole spiel, which basically comes down to, well, I can't kick the firm's butt, so I'm going to kick your butt.
Right. And that's kind of the point of that whole scene. I mean, obviously they want the key card, but is that you can't really touch a corporation.
Yeah. And the Reaper even says, other people have level 2 key cards. You didn't have to come after me. You wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he puts his key card on the table. So when Derek comes over to get it, he stabs scissors through Derek's hand. And then...
Which, that had to be a pretty hard stab to go through his hand and through that desk.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, that had to be pretty severe.
Because those weren't even, like, sharp scissors.
No.
Yeah.
And he didn't open them, so it was like the whole, like, through his hand and the desk.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the logistics of that. I've never stabbed someone's hand through a desk with scissors.
Well, I'm glad to know that.
I've never violently shoved scissors into anything, so I don't really know how good they would be.
Melanie ends up killing him with the...
Yeah, Melanie and him end up fighting. Does he rush her after he stabs Cho's hand?
I think so.
So anyway, they end up fighting, and there's like people that come up to the door and they're like betting on it because they pull out money and they're like betting on it. Yeah. They're like betting on it, and then that's when Melanie brings out that saw I mentioned earlier, and she saws him through the chest.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they send the first video. They record a video with the corpse.
Right.
Oh, and Melanie pulls the scissors out of Derek's hand, and she says, "I'll do it on the count of," and then she pulls them out, and they're still not. They have like a they have a truce, but they don't really care about each other. They're just trying to use each other to get to their own ends.
Because he even said, "You're enjoying this," and she said, "You're still one of them."
Yeah. So anyway, they make a video that has the corpse in it. They set it on fire.
Right. They put him in a cart, like
the cart that they were trying to use to bash down the door earlier.
and they put him in there, and then Derek does a video, um, which is funny if you watch in the background. There's some different things going on, but there's a lady that walks by, totally random out of the middle of nowhere, covered in post-it notes.
Yeah.
Like neon bright, multicolored post-it notes all over, and she's just kind of wandering around in the background.
Yeah.
So I need to know her story. Why is she covered in post-its?
Oh, one thing I didn't mention earlier, when the virus, I thought this was really funny. There's a part when the virus first takes over and is showing like random scenes of people going crazy. There's one woman that's on the phone with her mom and just like cussing her out, and then just says, "Bye, mom," and hangs the phone.
Yeah, she says she's gonna kill her.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Bye, mom." Yeah. But the lady with the post-it notes, I don't know why that's the first time I've noticed that.
I don't know.
But it was just, I'm like, look at her. She's running around with post-it notes.
But anyway, so they send the video up to the 9 to let them know they're coming, to like warn them. So then they take the key card, they go up to the next floor, and they're going to find the siren.
Right.
And this is when they put a bounty on him. There's this, and we probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I didn't think about it. But there's like a company app they have, which is not super important to the story, but that's where the timer is that tells them when the 8 hours are going to be up and they can leave the building, and like, and they send out a thing on it that they're wanted for like $450,000 or something, and it never comes back into play. It seems unnecessary. No one ever tries to take them out for the money or anything. And I guess there's a fight with the... There's the fight with the siren and the people following the siren, but you could have done that without having the bounty. The bounty just feels like something that was either from like an earlier draft and was left in, or just wasn't really necessary.
Hey, at least they got the graphics on the phone better than what we saw in the deleted scenes for Final Girl.
That's true. I don't think we ever see the phone, though.
I
guess we do see the wanted poster. Yeah.
They show it a couple times.
Yeah.
When he's looking at it. So this is where they confront the siren and her group of...
Is there something that happens before then? Is this when they talk in the bathroom doorway?
Yes.
And Cho asks Melanie what her top 3 favorite bands are. And what I think's funny about this is, from what I read, apparently it was something that they were on set and they ad-libbed and they just answered it in character what their favorite 3 bands were, so it got written into the movie. And they have a discussion about like the Dave Matthews Band and stuff, and it's really funny.
They're kind of flirty with each other because he said he's gonna take her out. He's gonna take her to see the Dave Matthews Band when they get out of there, and yeah.
And it's
funny because she's standing in one doorway and he's standing in the other in the gardenless hallway. And some guy starts to run down there, and she points the nail gun at him. She's like, something about back the other way. Yeah, I mean, it's just, she's a good actor.
And it's a nice scene that just gives you like a reprieve from everything.
Yeah.
And the I don't think we've said this, the actor for Melanie is the same. She plays the main character Grace in Ready or Not, the bride.
Samantha Weaving.
Yeah, and she's an amazing actress. I love her.
She really is, yeah. And she is funny in this movie, just her attitude.
And she plays a very different role in this than she plays in
Ready or Not.
Ready or Not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she's a good actress. And the guy, actually the main guy, and I don't remember his name, but he is Glenn in The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I don't know if
and I guess the Reaper is also someone in The Walking Dead, but...
Milton. He played Milton.
But I've not ever seen... really any of The Walking Dead except for one episode for a YouTube video I did about Negan, and then I don't know how much you've seen.
I think I watched the first 2 seasons and then it was kind of repetitive, so I quit.
Yeah, I have read all the comics. I did read the whole comic series, and actually I wasn't going to finish it because I read to like issue like 120 or something, and I was like, this is, I don't know, and then I was like, there's only 30 issues left, I might as well just power through and finish it, and I'm kind of glad I did because it has a nice little ending, but that's unrelated.
Tangent.
So anyway, this now is when they go to confront the siren.
Right.
Well, before this, Towers makes an offer to the siren that if she destroys her key card, he'll make her partner, and she agrees. But then she calls her assistant in there and says, hide this and don't even tell me where it is.
And she's not nice to her assistant.
Oh, not at all.
Not at all. So they go to confront the siren. She meets him out in the hallway, and she's got 5 goons with her.
Yeah.
And her secretary is this. I mean, she's just her typical secretary. In movies, is a typical secretary, and So here you've got Derek and Melanie, and then you've got the siren and her group of people, and the phone starts to ring on the desk in the middle, and here comes the secretary, and she's like, "Excuse me," and she goes and puts it on speakerphone, and then she's gone. That's like her whole
Yeah.
role in that scene was to turn the phone on.
And that the who's on speakerphone is a psychiatrist, because earlier in the second conversation they had with the CDC, because the CDC knows because the Nine informed the CDC that Derek was going on a killing spree, and even though he's not liable for their actions, the CDC still doesn't want people to die, obviously, and so uh, the CDC people tell Towers that they will try to get him in touch with a psychiatrist. So what the phone was ringing and what is put on speakerphone is the psychiatrist trying to talk Derek down.
But Towers is on the phone too, right?
No, not at
Oh,
that
okay.
part. Towers was on the phone when
Right.
Cho was getting beat up in the basement.
So the psychiatrist asks him how he feels, and Derek's reply is, "How do I feel? I feel like taking my clothes off. I feel like causing extraordinary amounts of property damage. I feel like I want to scream, want to blank, like twisting limbs and breaking bones. I feel great, Mark."
And then he tells the people that are there if anyone wants to leave, they're welcome to, and no one does, except the siren, because the siren's standing in front of the other guys, and she
Right.
leaves to go back to her office, and the other guys are standing there. Um,
But
and
that whole spiel he gives is funny because he goes through all this thing about terms and
yeah, I
conditions.
was gonna say he goes through all this legal jargon about what they're not liable for this, and
Right, and then
lists
at
off
the end of it, he goes, "They can be updated whenever the F I want.
yeah.
Consider yourself notified." And it's just like right before a fight scene. It's just the best thing ever.
This is such a fun movie, and it's yes, there's violence in it, and there's some heavy topics, but it doesn't go in depth with those in a way that makes it feel bogged down or anything like that. It's a fun movie.
Right. But I think it has a message about corporate America.
Yeah.
I really do. I
Yeah.
think how many of us are tied to our jobs and don't
Yeah.
enjoy life?
And then this part, they already have all the tools and everything. Well, Derek asks Melanie to go turn on a track on his phone because there's like some kind of speaker that she goes and puts his
like
phone
an
on.
iHome or
And
something.
I do think it's funny because she says, "It better not be Dave Matthews Band."
Right.
But then she looks down, and I think there's just like an open drawer at the desk, and there's just a hammer there, and she picks it up. I don't know if you noticed that, but she picks up a hammer. I don't know. I don't. I don't think it's something she set down. I think she notices it over there and then picks it up.
I didn't notice that.
Anyway, so then she comes back, and so then I think that's when he goes on the whole spiel, the legal jargon stuff and the terms and
I
conditions.
think so.
And then, they all charge at each other, and one of the people is wielding a fire extinguisher, and pretty quickly Derek knocks it out of that guy's hand and takes it and beats a bunch of people, and then ends up, like, I don't know, blowing it, whatever you call it.
Using the fire extinguisher.
Yeah. So the whole thing is really, like, smoky and hard to see through. I will say, if I mentioned this before we started the podcast, but if you were going into the Belko experiment expecting them to use more improvised stuff, because one thing that a lot of people complain about with the Belko experiment is they went into it expecting it just to be like killings with office supplies and things like that, and then the building had an armory, so everything was just guns. There's literally, the CDC people have guns, but they never shoot them or anything. The only gun that is used in this movie doesn't even kill anyone. And we'll talk about that later.
Right.
But, like, right now he uses a fire extinguisher and he, like, beats people in the head with it and then sprays it everywhere to make it super dark.
And it's it's more realistic than, our corporation has an armory in the basement. It's things they found around the building, so it's really cool the way they did that.
And I almost wonder if this had came out before the Belko experiment, if it would have got more eyes on it.
Maybe. It's one I'll never get tired of watching. It's just a good movie.
So anyway, they take those people out. So then they go, this is when they actually confront the siren. They go to the siren's office.
Did we mention that she told her secretary, did you ever finish that thought? She told her secretary to hide the key card? Okay.
Yeah, I said the secretary told her to hide the key card and not even tell her where she hid it.
Right, I didn't know if we finished that thought or not.
So anyway, they go to confront the siren, and they're, like, negotiating in her office, and every time they, like, threatened to do violence against her. She's like, well, if you do that, you won't get my key card. Um, and they end up coming to a deal, but I don't remember what the deal is. But before they end up coming with a deal, she throws that mug that is Derek's into the wall.
And he starts to go after her, and she's like, key card.
Yep.
Which, the mug is important. We'll come back to that in just a minute, but the mug is important.
Like, literally next scene after this, we'll get back to it. But, anyway, so they end up coming to some kind of deal. I don't remember the exact terms. But, she calls for her assistant and asks her assistant to go get her key card for her. And she brings back a little piece of black plastic that's all warped and she put it in a microwave because Towers offered her. I don't know if
Towers offered her the siren's job, pretty much.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't know if it was partner or if it was that. Anyway. And so the assistant agreed. And then the assistant ends up killing her and cuts her tongue off. She comes after her with a pair of scissors and kills her and then cuts her tongue off. Yeah. And then they make another video.
Right. Is this where he says the thing about their IQs being inversely proportional to their salaries? Does he tell?
I don't think that's... I think that's with... it might be here. It's either here or with Irene.
It's Irene, you're right.
Because I was going to say, because I think they're in the conference room when he says that.
I think you're right. There's a lot of good quotes in this movie.
There is. And what I was going to say here is, with the videos they send, obviously she's dead in it, but they have, her face is like on a treadmill in the back, because we saw her walking on the treadmill earlier in the video. And I think it's running.
It is.
And it's got blood on it. Yeah.
But Melanie takes her tennis shoes. She has tennis shoes in there, and she has
says
high
they
heels.
fit great. Yeah. But in the video they send to Towers, Melanie is holding the siren's tongue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't remember the exact words he says, but Derek says something like, "Oh, Mel's real bloodthirsty. She'll fit right in here."
Right. Right. When is the scene where he's peeing on Ewan's body?
It's after this.
Is it? Because that really makes
I wrote down. Yeah, I think it's after this because that's where I wrote it in my notes. Yeah, it is right after this because then that's whenever he kind of breaks down and he talks about the mug and everything.
Yeah.
And then they end up...
Right.
So anyway, Towers sends a video to Derek of him peeing on Ewan's corpse.
Right.
And then Derek picks up the biggest piece that's left of the mug.
Right, it's the broken handle.
Yeah, it's the handle and then a broken piece of the cup part, so it's like sharp.
Right.
And
he tells Melanie that his sister Lucy got him for his first day at the corporation when he was full of hopes, and I don't remember what he says, but yeah, when he was optimistic about his future. And this is the same sister that was on the phone with him at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
That said he never had time for anybody anymore.
So what were we? Oh, so Melanie and Derek end up making love here.
Which fun blooper if you watch the scene, if you watch closely, it goes from her having her bra straps on to her tank top, and then back to it switches back and forth on what she's got on top.
And doesn't it like cut between that and like the CDC and like this sex scene doesn't show anything.
No,
they're like fully clothed.
Yeah.
I mean not fully because she at one point she's like in the bra, but Derek like still has his pants on.
Yeah. It's pretty tastefully done, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, for a sex scene in a movie.
And I think it like cuts between them and the CDC outside, like what they're doing. And I mean, we don't really learn much about what the CDC's doing. They're just out there. Yeah. So, is this? So they can't get her key card; it's destroyed, and then they get an alert on their phone that the penthouse access has been revoked, and it's only for
the 9, right?
the 9. No, because what's her face can still get up there, Irene.
Oh.
So it's executive only. That's what they say.
Okay,
executive only. So I think that means they can't get a level 3 key card anymore. They either have to have Eileen's or one of the 9s.
Right, that makes sense.
Every time I say the 9s, or the 9, it reminds me of Skyrim. So their new plan is to, what's his name? Is to convince Ray, the IT guy, to get them away up there.
Right.
So he's in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
So they go down there to find him, and when they come in, he's smashing a keyboard against the desk, and they threaten him with like the nail gun to do what they want, but it seems like he's very jaded too. Like he doesn't care what happens to anyone, like
right.
the 9 or anything. And
you kind of get that impression from like everybody who works in the company except for the siren.
Yeah. And so they ask him if they can hack something for them, and he's like, I'm not getting in trouble again. And then they threaten him, and he's like, okay, who am I hacking? And then they're like, Irene Smythe, and he's like, oh, screw her.
Yeah.
And he starts hacking her PC. I don't know, he just slows down the internet. They don't really say how. He just slows down the internet on her computer somehow. And right. So then he sends her a fake patch update that's actually like a virus that's
gonna... because she calls him and she's being a total witch to him.
And he says like, oh, well, you don't give me enough money, and you only hired one IT guy to run the whole company and like all this stuff. You asked me to develop an app in 2 days and stuff like that. And so you could tell he doesn't like her.
Right.
And he's honestly one of my favorite characters in the movie. But so he sends a patch update to her computer, what he calls a patch update, and it's actually just a virus that's going to steal all of her files. So it deletes them all from her computer, and so only he has a backup of them.
Which is funny because he says he could have named it a virus to steal all of your data or something, and she would have installed it anyway.
Trojan virus, hard drive raper or something like that.
And he would have still installed it.
Because he's talking about how much of an idiot she is. Yeah. And so anyway, so then when she calls him back because all her stuff is gone, Derek answers the phone and is like, well, if you want your stuff, you're going to have to come get it. And it's her life's work. It's all of her files are on there, so she can't lose it, which is really dumb. Never do that. Always back up your stuff. Always have it.
In Irene's defense, she is an older lady who may not know that she needed to back up her stuff.
I get that, but the rule of 3, you should have it backed up in 3 places.
I know. Well, you know that. We're younger than she is.
We actually I took a digital preservation class, and that's one of the things they talked about, is to have it saved 3 places in 3 formats. That's not important though, but it's a good tip for you guys. So anyway, so she has to come down and get the hard drive.
But they let her pick where they're going to meet at. Because John is upset that she's going to meet with him, and she said, but they let me pick where. So she picks this conference room.
And then her bodyguard reveals that his gun is no longer in the holster. Because they're talking to Towers at the time.
Right.
And so they hid a gun in that conference room. They duct taped it under the table. And this is the one gun that's in the whole movie. Well, the only gun that is actively used in the movie, I should say.
And one thing we didn't mention, which you had mentioned, including in the video part of it, is every once in a while throughout the movie, we'll see a painting.
Yes.
Just kind of randomly throughout the movie.
It's kind of whenever there's like kind of important plot points. Like the siren gets a painting. Does the bull get a painting? I know the Grim Reaper does.
I think
the siren does.
I know the board does.
Yes.
But anyway, that kind of comes into play later on. But it's just to mention that.
And it kind of also came into play earlier because his sister mentioned on the phone that she had heard he took a painting.
Right.
And she says
assistant.
Yeah. And she says you should take a painting class, and he said, I don't have time.
Right. Yeah.
I was going to mention that at the end with the painting thing, but since we brought it up now. which it's fine. I don't care when we mention it. Um, so they get Irene Smythe to come down there, and so when she comes in the conference room, she reaches under the table because they show her that they have a laptop that the hard drive is hooked up to. Um, and so she goes to pull the gun out from under the table, and it's not there. And Derek and Melanie had come in before Irene had gotten there and taken the gun.
Right, Derek has it.
And this is when Derek says the IQ thing.
Right. One of my favorite lines in the whole movie, Derek looks at her and says, just a little pro tip. Employees' IQs at this firm are inversely proportionate to their salaries. So it's probably not a good idea to try to outsmart someone with a smaller paycheck. And I think, again, that goes back to the corporate America. Like, most of the people working under the big name CEOs and all of that probably have higher IQs than the people they work for.
And I mean, I know she's older, but we even see that kind of when she's talking to the IT guy about the computer. Like, you can tell she doesn't know anything.
Right. But she also kind of has that attitude of, I make more money than you, so you're going to do what I say, and you're going to fix my problem. And it's kind of funny because we had a customer at work today that was kind of like that, where it was like, I pay, you have your job because of me, you're going to do what I need you to do. Why didn't you do this 15 minutes ago when they just asked me 5 minutes ago for it? And I mean, it's just that mentality a lot of people have.
So then when they're doing the negotiation with her, this is when that paper that can be signed to prevent the foreclosure comes back into play that Melanie has.
Right.
Because she...
Actually... Has he already told her that...
The bank thing?
Yeah.
Yes, he told her that when they had the discussion earlier in the Siren's office. He told her that he takes a look at the paperwork and tells her that the mortgage is old and...
It was part of a bad bat.
Yes, and so the bank may not have it. So if she asks them for the original paperwork, they'll have a lot of trouble finding it, and that could get...
That could be her loophole.
Yeah.
Which I think shows character development on him, because
Yeah.
at the beginning he was like, I'm not helping you. And now he's like, here's your loophole, let's see what we can do.
And it's like he said earlier, his thing is finding loopholes.
Right. But it goes from showing he's in favor of the company to showing that he's...
In favor of her.
Helping the little people out.
Yeah.
Compared to a company.
And this movie really is like a middle finger to corporate America.
It is. It straight up is.
I mean, it's like your wildest fantasy dream of what, like, you wish you could tell your boss off. Well, what if you could kill your boss?
I was just thinking it's kind of like a corporate purge. Like,
yeah, really.
Do whatever you want because you're not going to be held accountable for it.
Yeah. And I think it's perfect that they set it at the law firm that found that loophole.
Yeah.
And the character we follow is the one that did find the loophole.
Right, yeah.
And what I like about this movie is I feel like it doesn't really give us a whole lot that's unnecessary. Like, right. It's a very tight script. Other than the wanted thing, I feel like everything else is just very tight, and there's no fat, there's nothing to cut. It's very well thought out.
It moves really quick too.
Yeah,
it's not so so fast that you can't keep up, but there's no dull moments really in the movie.
Yeah, it has a lot of action scenes, but then it has some like slower scenes, like the scene we talked about where they talk about their bands, or the scene where he talks about how his sister got him that mug, stuff like that kind of breaks up the chaos.
And I think it's a good way in a movie like this to do character development instead of giving us, the first 45 minutes is us getting to know everybody.
Yeah.
It's action, it's horror, and then we have those little moments where we learn more about the person.
And
it kind of makes you root for him more as the movie goes on.
And the little snippets he gives us about them is just enough to know, oh, this is who this character is. And it's like people like Melanie or Ewan, he doesn't give an introduction to, because you figure out who they are through their character.
Right.
And they don't need an introduction, but the other ones, it's a good way to just to let us know, oh, this is who this is, without.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't really feel like they're spoon feeding the audience. It just like it doesn't feel like they're talking down to us or anything. It's just like, this is who this is. Here you go.
Right.
So
anyway, they're in the conference room. Derek has the gun. They tell Irene they need a passcode to get upstairs.
Irene tells them that they need a passcode to get upstairs because she gives them the key card, but she tells them,
Oh, that's right.
yeah,
Um,
and she refuses to sign the mortgage papers.
well,
Or
she says she will, but she says then I can revoke my signature
Yeah.
and say I signed them under duress, and it won't mean anything.
yeah,
I mean, she's just not a good person.
Yeah,
She's just.
so she tells her to take the mortgage papers to Towers, and it makes Melanie mad. So she smashes the hard drive that has all that
Right.
has the backup on it, and so
So actually, she hasn't given him. Do they have the key card?
yes, but they don't have the code yet.
Right. Okay, that's right.
And so Smythe makes a new deal. If Derek gives Smythe Melanie, then
She'll enter the passcode
Yes.
in the elevator for him.
yeah, and it's a one-time use passcode. I don't think she says that now, but she says it later.
Yeah, she says it when he's getting on the elevator.
Yeah.
Which really made me mad the first time I watched this movie because he agrees to the deal, and
well, at first you don't know he does because he starts to count down and he has the gun aimed at Smythe, but then Smythe says one, he knocks out Melanie.
Right. And when she wakes up, he's tying her to a chair, and I'm
Yeah.
like, we
And
finally liked this guy. We're rooting for him, and he's being a total douche.
Well, and then he forces her to kiss him too, which makes it even more
Right.
like gross.
Right.
But then you find out that he
So, Smythe
puts in the code in the elevator.
takes Derek to the elevator. He gets in, scans the card. She puts in the code, and she's smiling, and he's smiling, and she says, "Why are you smiling?" And he opens his mouth.
No, he opens his hand and he has the stuff in his hand.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was thinking it's Melanie's mouth. He's got screws and nuts from the
Yeah.
chair.
And he's got one screw and two nuts because the other screw was in Melanie's mouth.
Right, which he gave to her when they kissed, so
Yes.
she knew that she could get out of the chair.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it goes back to the fact that their weapons were tools because he had that screwdriver because that's what his weapon was. So he goes up in the elevator, and when Smythe turns around, Melanie's standing there.
Yeah. So when Smythe goes from smiling to I think she's smiling or she looks smug, and then she starts to panic a little bit when she sees he's holding those like nuts and bolts.
Right.
And then Melly comes up behind her.
Right.
So then Derek goes upstairs by himself to the penthouse. And when he gets there, the nine are pouring champagne and celebrating, and they offer Derek a seat at the table to be one of the partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, everything he's worked for, that's what he wanted this whole entire time. His whole career, that's what he's been pushing for. And all he has to do is sign his name. And,
there's two girls that are standing on either side of him, and he refuses to sign. And one of them, she's holding a champagne glass, she breaks it and goes to stab him, and he ducks out of the way, and it stabs the other woman.
Right. And so all heck kind of breaks loose in the boardroom, and it actually ends up being he has his wrench left, and John has a golf club.
Yes, and the rest of the nine are just kind of like cowering back in the corner.
Right, they're just kind of watching the show.
Yeah.
Big fight scene, and it kind of cuts. I think it cuts between their fight scene and then Irene and Melanie, right? Does it kind of go back and forth?
I don't think so. I don't think we see what happens to Irene. I think that just ended. Like, we just see Melanie coming up behind Irene, and that's it.
Oh, I thought there was more to it than that.
Mm-mm.
So anyway, they're fighting.
Because he does coke right before they start fighting.
Right, and he's got it all over his nose. Like,
yeah. And then he gets a leg up in the fight because he blows cocaine into Derek's face. But Derek ends up getting the upper hand. Oh, I remember what happens. So he like breaks one of his golf clubs. Towers like loses one of his golf clubs or like breaks it or something. So he's having one of the other nine throw him a club. And so by the time he's got it, Derek slipped under the table, put the mug on his hand, like what's left of it,
yeah, kind of like brass knuckles.
Yeah. And then comes out. Oh, we skipped the scene with the rest of the scene with the gun. Should we go back to that and talk about that? Because there's like the security guard guy that is with Irene. Because that's when they fight and they end up in like the daycare room.
Oh yeah,
the gun.
Yeah, that was something else we were talking about. It's Bull, isn't it? That's in the daycare room.
I think so, because I think he's the one that had the gun before that got put under the table, and he shoots out he has the gun and he has it pointed at Derek, and Derek's on the floor, and then he shoots all the bullets around him into like stuffed animals and stuff because they're in like a daycare room.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to use a gun, so
He
he
says
puts his,
they're like a coward's weapon or
right.
something.
So he puts on brass knuckles and starts to beat up Derek.
Yeah.
Um,
And then Derek ends up getting the upper hand because um, the bull sprays pepper spray at him. He catches it in his mouth and spits it back in his face.
right. And then how's he kill him?
I don't remember. I don't know if he does. He may.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Well, he probably does, but I don't remember how.
He stabs him in the head with a screwdriver.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because he stabbed it into his shoulder, and then he pulls out and stabs him in the head.
Irene is beat to death with a hammer off screen, so we don't actually see her.
So then Derek crawled over to the water cooler and, like, cleansed himself.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even, like, flip it open. He stabs it with a screwdriver to get it open.
So if you're ever in a situation like this, have a screwdriver.
It reminds me of Tommy Pickles.
I thought it was kind of odd that there was just a daycare room on the this floor of the.
But I pointed out, I think it's like a conference room floor, and so maybe when they have clients come in, the clients, if they bring their kids, can send them to the daycare room.
Yeah, it wasn't a very big room.
I mean, not really.
But there were no kids there, so maybe it's a good thing there weren't kids there since all this was going on. I mean, it was mayhem and there were no kids. But anyway, so fast forward back to where we were at.
Yes.
And so Derek and John are outside of the conference room.
Yes.
And he tells them, he tells John, he says, do you know what they're thinking? Because the rest of the board's standing there watching. He said they're thinking how much their take of the company is going to go up when I kill you.
Their cut of the pie is going to get bigger.
Yeah. Which again, corporate America, we're kind of harping on that point, but again, I think that is what he's driving. They're kind of what they're driving at with the whole movie.
And Towers is like the head of the board. I don't think any of their board members ever say anything. We don't hear them say a word in the movie.
No. But one thing they do talk about is it's not thumbs up, thumbs down. It's actually back in Greek mythology.
Yes.
It was sideways.
I think it was Roman.
No, I thought it was Greek. Anyway, mythology. You took your thumb sideways for negative because it was like slitting your throat.
And so that's what they did whenever they fired Cho, is they all did that to... So Cho, in this time, when he's fighting Towers, asks the board what they want done. And they do that symbol.
Right, but before you go into that, so where they are fighting at, what Dawson mentioned earlier is there's a opening in the middle of the building all the way down from the ninth floor.
And like it's got railings around it. It's not just a big opening, but Cho has got Towers up on the railing.
Right, and that's when he looks at the board and asks what they want, and they all do the
throat slitting gesture.
Right. Yeah.
And so he uppercuts him over the railing.
But you know, when we were watching that last night, he's got his hand on the rail, and then he punches him, and he just lets go of the railing. And I'm sorry, but if I was falling, I think I would have tried to hold on.
I don't know what the centrifugal force would look like with that kind of thing.
Well, that's true.
I don't know how far you would actually fly if someone punched you like that.
Yeah, that's true. So, Towers falls 9 floors and hits the ground, and then the quarantine's over. And everybody...
you missed a part. Derek goes back into the conference room.
Oh, that's right.
And the board slides him the thing again to become partner. He signs it, signs off on the mortgage, and then quits.
Signs off on Melanie's mortgage.
Yes.
And he says, I took the job just long enough to make a difference. And he signs it.
Yeah.
And then he puts it back in the thing, and then he says, I quit.
Yeah. I wonder, because I don't know if the board would do this, but I imagine they would if they did all this other stuff. Well, Irene Smythe said earlier about the pleading, like, temporary insanity or under duress.
That was her signature.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I don't know if this would be legally binding. If you can get away with murder while you're under the influence, why would a legal document that you signed while under the influence of the disease count as legal?
But I think the timing, if I remember right, the time had ran out before he signed that.
I don't know.
I think the 8 hours were up before he signed that. I think they did that on purpose.
I don't know.
So anyway, then we cut to the only time we see out really out anywhere outside of the
Yeah.
building other than the CDC, and he is in a painting class. Um, and actually, he's in the painting class before that scene you were talking about. It kind of jumps back.
Yeah, because it shows him painting the virus, what the virus looks like.
Right. And so then we jump to the part where he signs the paperwork. And so he's in this really bright lit room in comfortable clothes, and he's in a painting class. And then he kind of leans over, and there's Melanie
And
at a
she flips
different
him
easel
off.
painting a picture. And she flips him off, and he flips her back off, and they smile goofily at each other, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. And it's a good movie, and it's not super heavy or anything, and it's not one that you necessarily have to be paying a whole lot of attention to, because it's kind of like John Wick, where it's like the fight scenes are like the big thing. So like
Right.
you could just turn your brain off and sit down and watch this, or have it on in the background while you're doing
I
something
think
else.
that's why I like it so much, because it's not, I mean, once you watch it once to get the base storyline, like
Yeah.
why is he? I mean, you could watch it and have no idea what was going on and just be like, okay, it's a virus. They're all killing each other.
And really, the plot isn't all that original. It's an individual fighting back against the corporate machine, but it's just the way it's portrayed is so interesting.
Right. And I think the the cast just did such a good job. Derek and Melanie have a good chemistry on screen, I think, and the siren, I don't know who plays her, but she just looks like somebody that would just be,
Yeah.
I mean, just be in
And
that
even
position and be
even when we first meet her and she's walking on the treadmill and she's on the phone, she does such a good job of acting like
right,
someone that's high up that
right. And but I think it's so funny when they're in her office. Melanie's on the couch, and when her assistant attacks her, it kind of flashes to Melanie, and Melanie's just
Yeah.
kind of giggling and got
Yeah.
this like oops look on her face. I don't know. She's just such a good actor.
Yeah, because we mentioned that the siren is murdered by the assistant, and we don't see it; it's off screen.
Right.
We see the body later face down on the treadmill with the blood trail, and we see her tongue, but the rest of it happens off screen.
Right. And that's one thing too. A lot of the I mean, there's a lot of killing in it, but a lot of them you don't really even see.
Yeah, and it's like we said. I mean, there's some blood and stuff in it, but it's not like super violent or gory. Like people aren't like losing limbs or anything.
Right. It's basically everybody's out to kill each other.
Yeah.
Um.
I mean, it is a rated R movie, but it's not.
Right.
It's
and
not Saw.
that may be from language. I mean, because
Yeah.
if you use the F word more than once, it's rated R automatically.
Well, there's some sexually suggestive stuff in it. There's one scene where you see boobs, and then
That's true.
there's a lot of language.
That's true. It's just an all around good movie. I mean, Dawson's a lot younger than I am, but to be in corporate America, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily the company I work at now, but I've seen it in the past where, the higher ups don't care about the little people, and exactly what he said, the people that are lower on the totem pole probably have a higher IQ than the people higher up.
Yeah.
And who's not had a day at work where you just want to go crazy on everybody?
And I feel like a lot of people nowadays are very jaded and don't like their jobs are not where they want to be, and so it's an expression of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think it says a lot about how, he hadn't seen his sister in so long, and it says a lot about how we are, like, what drives us as a
Yeah.
nation, I think. As
And
far
what our
as
culture forces us to prioritize.
right, like family should always come before your job. I mean, regardless, your family should always come first. God should come first, and then your family. But as far as work, your family should come before your job. But we don't have that luxury in this country a lot of times. So let's not get into all that because that's getting really in depth. But what was I saying? Oh, it's just an all around good movie, and I mean, sometimes horror movies can be just an all out kill fest, blood and guts and gore, and that's all we see, and that's all we care about. And Dawson and I have talked about this a lot the last couple weeks, that horror is so subjective. You may watch this movie and say, this is an action movie. This is not a horror
Yeah,
movie.
because honestly, I would say this is more similar to John Wick than a lot of horror movies I've seen, but that doesn't necessarily mean this is not horror.
Right. So there's just so many different kinds of horror, and we are hoping to be able to cover a lot of different kinds.
Yeah.
We'll be doing our first book in a couple weeks. So
We've got some comic book ideas to cover.
yep, yep. So we're really excited, and we hope that you take the time to watch Mayhem and let us know in the comments what you think.
And next week we'll be doing 30 Days of Night,
which is, in my opinion, one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. And in a couple weeks, we will be doing our first book, which is going to be A Hatred of Mondays by Brian Keith McDonald. He is an independent horror author, so I'm really excited to get into that. But we thank you for listening, and if you got any comments, any suggestions, ideas of what we should do, let us know in the comments.
And pick up that Hatred of Mondays book and read it before our podcast episode so you know what's going on.
And just kind of a brief overview of that book. I won't go too much into it, but if you are a Garfield fan and you like horror and you like spoofy stuff, pick up this book.
If you're on the internet a lot and you know anything about, like, I'm Sorry John, like the subreddit or anything like that, you'll probably like this. So
It's fun. All right, we'll see you next week.
Yep.